Hi, I'm Jakira Black and this is day 3 of my book review for this book, Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, How to Edit Yourself into Print. I've read chapter 3 today, which is about point of view, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on some of what it says in the book. Tips that it gives for editing. I've said already that I'm very much at the editing stage. I can write a story, I can plan a story, I can come up with really good ideas. I can write 100,000 words in 30 days. But editing is not so easy because life gets in the way. And sometimes life has to get in the way when you've got kids. That's just the way it is. But also, it's very easy not to get on with it when you feel that you're at a loss on what to actually look for. So I thought I would get this book and read it, and I thought I would share some of the thoughts with you, my thoughts with you. I do recommend this book. I've still not put a link to Amazon for the book. But like I said, it's Self-Editing for Fiction Writers, How to Edit Yourself into Print by Brené Brown and Dave King. So it's easy enough to Google it, but I will try to put a link in today. Maybe, possibly. So, yeah, so like I said, I've been reading Points of View today, and I tend to write now. When I first started writing, I used to write in third person. And then when I started doing creative writing courses, and I came across first person, and I remember saying to someone that I don't like first person. I just don't like it. But then I started writing it and in first person, and I found it really an interesting perspective to write from, because realistically, when you're writing from first person and you're being very intimate with the character, you know the perceptions that the character, the things that the character is going through, you know, that is what the reader goes through. Whereas like third person tends to be slight, you know, obviously not so much. So I suppose when you're editing, because the thing is, if you're struggling with what point of view that you wanted to write your story in, you might you could either be saying that you're writing in first person and actually be writing third person, or vice versa. So obviously it's important to know and to read your story or your novel, your manuscript, can't say the words, and decide, you know, how does this story work? Does it work well in first person, or would it work better in third person, or have I mixed up the POVs? So like, for instance, you know, like I was saying, with first person you get that intimacy. The reader, as they read, is experiencing what the character is experiencing. Obviously they're not physically experiencing, but you know, they are actually experiencing the reader's thoughts and the reader's emotions. And to be quite honest, in third person you can do that as well, because and in another video I talked about narrative distance, you know, and if you have a very close narrative distance but you're still writing in third person, then the reader can still experience at least some intimacy with your character, depending on at what level that you do it. So yeah, you know, and then there's, you know, sort of like, is your narrator all-knowing? Can they enter anyone's head, or do they enter just one person's head, or do they not enter anyone's head? Who is your narrator? Is your narrator the first person, the character? If you've got multiple first-person characters that take turns, or is your narrator outside the story, telling us the story in third person? And also, and this book doesn't mention it because it says that there's only 3 types. They say that, I think it said something like there's supposed to be 27, but they think there's only 3. But there's also second person, you know, which can't be forgotten, you know. I'm saying, you know, again, aren't I? So like, for instance, you might have a character that's, I'm sort of directing myself to the end here. You might have a character and you decide, I'm going to deal this straight to the reader, and I'm going to make the reader not experience the character's emotions and feelings, etc., which are obviously feelings and emotions is the same thing, but you're going to have that the character is the reader. So instead of I or they, he, she, you have you. You're walking down the street. You're scared. You can hear feet behind you. That sort of thing. So another thing that it talked about, and initially I was guilty of this, and when I first started writing I had no idea how to write, and I was very, very guilty of this, of mixing up POVs. So for instance, I remember a scene that I wrote, and it was a fan fiction based on Gina Mule's Earth Children series, which is set in the Ice Age. And there was a hunter, and then there was the hunted. I can't remember, probably oryx or something, a deer. And I had them looking at each other, and I was revealing what the hunter was thinking, the person, and then I was revealing what the deer or oryx or whatever it was feeling too, and sort of like them looking at each other, which at the time I thought, oh, this is really cool. No, it was confusing. It was extremely confusing for anyone to read it. I think maybe sort of like the people that were reading my story were fine with it because they're just used to the actual world, but you know, of children and Ice Age and stuff, because you know they're all fans of Gina Mule's series, and they really wanted to read the story. But realistically, what we should do is have each POV be a separate part, not have one person's POV mixed up with someone else's POV in a section. You know, do a new chapter for a new POV. Don't do POVs in the same chapter because it just confuses the reader, and the reader doesn't know where they are, and the reader that doesn't know where they are is going to stop reading, and you're not going to get anywhere, are you? Also, your language. The language that you're using as a narrator, the language that you're using as a third person narrator, the language that you're using as a first person narrator. Is it in keeping with the character? Is it in keeping with the narrator? Is it right for the viewpoint? And also descriptions. how you tell, how you tell how the viewpoint character feels about what you're describing. So, for instance, going back to the deer and the hunter, if the hunter's feelings were probably that he wanted to provide for his family and for his cave, and he needed to kill this deer or whatever it was. So the feelings were, I need to do this, I need to kill this animal, and also that it was sort of like survival of the fittest, and the human saw his need as more important than the animal's need to stay alive. But, sort of like, doing that, you need to describe how the character is feeling and have it in keeping with the character. So, that hunter, if he was like, I don't know, quite bored at hunting and didn't really want to do it, and he was just like, I don't care anyway, I'm just going to kill this thing, and, it's not really in keeping with the character, because the character wanted to, so don't go off on tangents really in your POV. Keep what you have written already about your character in keeping with the rest of your story on how your character acts. A certain amount of mapping might be good for that, using Excel. Sort of maybe do some free writings, about what your character is like, just so you can keep character profiles, just so you can keep the POV right for the character, or right for, everything. So yeah, like I said, this book, it's got a checklist at the end of each chapter. I'm really, really liking this. I am learning quite a lot. I haven't learned so much today because oh, look at my nail varnish, it's terrible. I already am quite sort of au fait with POV, and I tend to, if I'm writing in a POV, I tend to keep it at that, and I already know things like, you shouldn't mix, different POVs, a different chapter, and I tend to sort of like try to have the character reacting like he always reacts. So I didn't learn so much from this, but it's interesting. And the thing is, like, it was talking about the narrative distance, and it being I can't think of the word. I can't find it. I can't think of the word, but like a continuum, of some closer and some further away. And yeah, that is where I'm at with sort of like narrative distance and third person point of view. I'm writing a story at the moment for my masters. It's my end of module assignment, so it's a 4,000 word story, and what I'm actually doing is writing the first chapter of a book that I do intend to continue working on, called Starrect. And so I'm writing it in third person, and I'm trying to use some sort of narrative distance as well as omniscience. I can't even say that word, where, all-knowing narrator. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful. Do get the book. Do. It will really, really help you for editing. I would assume that in time it would help you with actually writing as well, because once you get better at writing and once you get better at editing, then I assume that it's going to have a knock-on effect of your writing, because it does. The more you write, the better you get at writing. you know, and the more you edit, it's going to have a knock-on effect, not just on your editing skills, but on your writing skills. So chapter 4 tomorrow, which I will be covering, is about proportion, which I'm not really exactly certain what that is, and I half feel like reading it now just because I'm like, what's proportion? But yeah, and that will be tomorrow, and I will be back with another video for you all. And buy the book, buy Editing Books, and you know, just subscribe to my channel, like this video if you found this useful, and get better at writing, you know, have fun in writing. Okay, bye.